really want.
It is 6 o'clock, and I am calling to order our town council's Trophy Club workshop.
Pardon?
We do have a quorum, and our esteemed councilperson, Rylan Rowe, is on vacation, where hopefully it's cool. And we are going to open this for a workshop regarding short-term rentals. We'll read the item in just a minute, but I just want to tell you that this is not a work session to take any action. I like to call it a listen to learn. Most of us have limited information around this, so we've also, I want to say thank you to all residents who have sent us emails over the last 12 months for me and prior to that, as well as just concerns regarding how Trophy Club is going to work with short-term rentals, and as well as leases, home leases. That's not a part of this necessarily, but from our point of view of resident, it is. And I'm just going to say right now, bottom line, and if you read your packet, a very important piece of information to know is how many of your homes are short-term rentals. And we don't have a clue. And I'm not so sure that we have I know we don't have a clue specifically on how many of our homes are leased. And that was a discussion that Brandon and I had, and that is going to require some work. So tonight, we are going to listen to learn from our esteemed town attorney. Is that correct? Yes.
That's
Say yes.
correct, and Brandon is blocking me, so
Oh, okay. Well,
sit
get
right
it worked
here.
out down there.
I'm trained to stand up, so
You don't.
I'll do my best. Well, let me start with this. So we do have a definition of short-term rental, and it's found in the Texas Tax Code, and it's Chapter 156. This is your hotel occupancy tax code, and it says this. In this subsection, this is a 156.001. It's in the definitions. In general, 30 days or more of a rental is not a short-term rental. That's a lease. Okay. Short-term rental is anything less than that in a sense. And says this, it's subsection B. In this subsection, short-term rental means the rental of all or part of a residential property to a person who is not a permanent resident under section 156.101, and that's where you get the permanent resident is the 30-day plus time frame. So that's kind of a general statutory context for at least one definition of short-term rental, and we know that there are many others. You have the vernacular. What does it really mean? VRBO? Is it home away? Is it Airbnb? What do they actually call these things? So if you're looking for one definition, statutory definition, there's short-term rental in the tax code. And again, that's chapter 156. So let me click here. Oops. Wait, are we in the selection? Or is it?
So you should be able to just scroll.
Oh. Okay. So what we did was we took some cases, case studies, basically from ordinances that we've drafted for other municipalities that have many short-term rentals. And you'll see in these slides at the very end there, you'll see the city of Fredericksburg. I think they're a pretty good example because they have a huge booming short-term rental tourism. And in fact, they were recently sued a few days ago over their short-term rental ordinance. So if you're wondering how all these cases are going, a lot of them have gone up and down through courts on the state and federal level. I think it's the Mums case with the city of Grapevine. That one went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court kind of looked at arguments from the state. So the state was fighting in favor of short-term rentals, and then you had municipalities that were all fighting against short-term rentals and the ability to regulate. And the Texas Supreme Court kind of looked at arguments from both sides and said, this is a really interesting topic. We'd really like to see how this shakes out through the appeals courts, and we'll kind of wait and see how these things go as they go up and down the courts. So that's kind of the status. At least in that case, I thought it was interesting that the Texas Supreme Court kind of took a look at it from that perspective. So you have a lot of case law, a lot of attempts to regulate. You have attempts to regulate that outrightly ban short-term rentals, and most of those have been challenged and defeated. Then you have some that attempt to regulate certain avenues, like, for example, the city of Austin attempted to regulate a certain category of short-term rentals for I think they termed it like non-residential owners. So these are people that own property but aren't actually homesteaded and living in the property, that are kind of using it for maybe a type of commercial purpose, even though the courts have all looked at these and said, this isn't commercial, this is residential. So we have a lot of different varying opinions about what these things really are and how to regulate them and how they're defined, and municipalities all throughout the state and the U.S. have attempted to regulate the best they can. And a lot of times they've been challenged and defeated, and other times they have been challenged and they found some wiggle room in adopting ordinances that help with the goals that they're aimed at. So drafting and so I wanted to jump. Oh. So this presentation is focused on actual drafting and adoption and implementation of ordinance. And so we have a lot of questions. These are questions for y'all to consider, for us to discuss, so we can get a good idea of what we really want. So here's some threshold questions. What is the current status of short-term rentals in the town? So you do have an ordinance, and maybe it applies to short-term rentals. The reason I say maybe is because the ordinance doesn't tell you how long you have to rent for it to be applicable to you. And that ordinance is your residential, single-family residential leasing ordinance. So what that does is it basically provides a mechanism for you to gather details on who is leasing. They have to go through a permitting process, but doesn't prevent them from doing it. It's just oversight. And then it also gives you an opportunity to inspect properties if you need to. So there should be licensing or permitting, reporting requirements. And a lot of those are going to be directed to code enforcement, just making sure that these people who are renting out structures or residential structures in your town aren't modifying the structure on the interior and creating rooms and I guess doing other things that ordinarily require more than just a leasing permit.
And we have 25 of those that are.
How many do we have?
About 25 that are currently registered.
Of short-term rentals?
No, just rentals.
Lease rent.
Okay, we do have that.
We have 25 of those in any category.
Yeah, except that we did discuss the fact that there could be.
Correct. We know that there are many that have not registered.
Right.
With that, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know how many we are missing at this point.
Which gets back to the very first point Dean's talking about and the mayor brought up. How do you identify these things? That's a monumental task.
Correct.
I would think.
Yeah, there are methods for us to do that, working cooperatively with the MUD that could help us in that. We'll never be perfect with it. You can't be, you can't get them all. But there are mechanisms to be able to check on the status of properties that are rental occupied, and at least have the opportunity to see if they are a rental.
Can the use of the Denton CAD or Tarrant CAD on who's not homesteaded be a guide?
Could be.
As far as how many?
Yeah, usually a comparison of water records, of the account name for water records and the owner occupancy name and the homestead information about a property will usually point you towards properties that are inclined to be rental occupied, but you still have to verify.
Mm-hmm.
So if we, in looking at doing anything for ourselves as we go forward, this is the first thing we have to do is put some time
And energy into that.
which
That's right.
you'd indicated could require some time.
Correct. Oh, absolutely. Yes, it does. Yes.
And it will require cooperation with the MUD as well, which we'll get. It's not that, but you still have to go out there and do that. So that's step number one.
Step number one.
Yes.
And that's why we have the questions phrased this way. Any pre-existing short-term rental regulations requiring amendment? So that's something also to look at. And if you're just looking at the ordinance that you have, if you were to build off that ordinance, you could probably do that. There's some terms that would probably need to be revised. For example, it uses the word reside. And so what does reside mean? I just read the hot statute there in chapter 156 of the tax code. Reside means something different than just renting for a day. So we have some definitions that we probably could clean up, some language we could clean up, but you could probably start there and build off that if you wanted to. Arguably, you have an ordinance that addresses short-term rentals, even though it's not, it was never intended that way, I don't think. So, and that was adopted back in 2006, I want to say. So if the intent there was to address short-term rentals, I mean, you have language that does it. So some things that we're going to suggest is that you go into more depth as far as determining why you need to regulate short-term rentals. Okay, and it's important to build a record when you do that. So any record of short-term rental related complaints, what type of complaints, who complains, short-term rental occupants, long-term residential neighbors. And so it's, were any of y'all here when you adopted your sexually oriented business ordinance many years ago?
I don't think so.
Okay, so when you adopt ordinances like these, ordinarily what you would do is you would kind of build a record, okay? How many complaints, where are they coming from? What is the nature of the complaint? What are, in the sexually oriented business ordinances, what you're focused on are what are called secondary effects. Okay, so I'll just kind of use that term loosely. These are secondary effects of short-term rentals. So it's not going to be sufficient just to say, we don't like them. Okay, you have to be able to build a record and establish the why. And so secondary effects help you get there. Code violations, litter, noise, parking, zoning code violations. And so you can go on, intoxication. So what you want to do is you kind of want to establish a record showing the why. What are the secondary effects? What is the impetus for adopting an ordinance to regulate these things?
Do we currently have a method of tracking? Forget short-term rentals, just can we track, ordinances for litter or for noise and attach it to a particular address?
We can, with that part. Then the question becomes knowing if it's a short-term rental during that period or not. And that's
a different part, but the idea is the town does have a method of tracking some of the stuff already if it comes to building a case.
correct.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and that kind of goes along with this discussion. What are your goals? Is it to limit or reduce short-term rentals? Notice we didn't say ban. If you want to ban, I mean, it's the risk is yours. Just know that the bans have been challenged at every level, and even limited types of bans on certain, who owns it, who's homesteaded, are they Texas residents? Do they come from out of state? That kind of thing. So do you address nuisance type issues, life safety, or for short-term rental occupants? Are you getting short-term rentals with bed bugs? Do they have enough fire alarms? Those are the questions. Repair an existing ordinance. Do we need to go back? And we've talked about that a little bit. Do we need to go back and just kind of refine and repair what you have? Zoning regulations versus traditional permitting and enforcement. And this is important because if I recall correctly in the Grapevine case, what they did was they tried to make the argument that it was denied because it was not listed within any zoning category. And the courts came back and said, no, we don't think that's right. We think that it's single family residential and it fits within that category. So the arguments against short-term rentals because they are commercial uses usually, or at least we've seen them fail before. So do you want to amend your zoning code, or do you want to put short-term rental ordinance in some other provision? So one advantage to having it in your zoning code is you can set administrative remedies. And so what you do is you say, if you don't appeal within a certain time period and you fail to exhaust those remedies, then you don't get to challenge them later. And so it's kind of like, if I could give a good example, it's like Building Standards Commission. If you were to challenge a decision that a property was a public nuisance, but you never show up at any hearings, you don't attempt to fight it in any other way, maybe you make a phone call, that's probably not sufficient. But if you actually come up and you follow the ordinance and you challenge at every level, then you exhaust your administrative remedies, and then maybe you have a chance to fight against the town at the next level. And so if you are using your zoning code to establish an administrative process, they have to follow the process.
So if we took our existing ordinance and did the same thing, it would work for both.
If you add it to the zoning, or if you you could keep your existing ordinance and adopt a short-term rental ordinance in your zoning code, and you could have both of them. Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So these are kind of our recommendations. Use the task force. This goes to some questions about how do we know? What are we looking at? How have we tracked the problems? Do you have citizens that are making the complaint? Are there people that are kind of in a concerted effort trying to show you the problem that exists? So just some things to consider. How involved do you want the public to be in that process? Do you want to establish subcommittee or committee to work with Brandon to help adopt an ordinance? Do you want to do it on your own? Do you want code enforcement to go out and start looking, what are the avenues that you want to take? So just kind of think about that strategically.
Dean, are there any other stakeholders that we're not thinking about here? Governmental stakeholders, other entities that have experience in this area?
Such as?
Well, like government, I mean, there's a lot of towns, municipalities, all thinking about this, working on this. I'm trying to reach beyond our borders here and get input. I don't know what that looks like necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know what that looks like either, but you made me think of an example. A couple weeks ago, I was curious because I was working on this, and I looked at, that weekend where all the short-term rentals were in the town of Trophy Club, and I didn't find any for that weekend, but the one that it did show was actually just across the street in Roanoke. So if the question is, do you want to work cooperatively with other local governments to kind of strategize on a process that you want to use to ensure safety of everybody within both towns or regionally? I mean, that's probably something y'all could discuss with them. Okay, so staff work sessions, representation from departments involved, police, fire code, finance, planning, development, legal. So these are, of course, our notes. Stress the importance of gathering data. You gotta establish those secondary effects. It goes a long way. You have to be able to show that there's something out there that you're really trying to regulate. Okay, and so a lot of what we're seeing is the courts are starting kind of with this real property interest, going back to the 1800s, where they say, look, people have had a right to lease their property forever in the state of Texas, and that's paramount. And that's the argument that we usually see. And so if you're going to regulate that, you need to figure out a paramount public purpose for doing so.
I want to ask the question again. You said there were 28 homes that are leased. What did you say?
It's 25.
225.
No,
25.
25.
25, but we do not know specifically the short-term rentals.
Correct.
I've
And we
been
don't know
trying
which
to
ones we're
do,
missing.
well, I know she wants me to bring
No,
this
no,
up though.
no, I'm not.
No, that's all right.
That's
I've been
all.
trying to do some research, and I've
Yeah.
had some other people who are computer illiterate on doing research, and I've been able to find 6 short-term rentals in Trophy Club, identifiable. So,
And that's,
but and that took a little bit of time because, like you said, you just can't go on and look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So,
Sometimes you might look at different websites to figure it out in different timeframes.
Yeah.
And then if you're inching up against the weekend, maybe there might be one.
well, this is a reasonable search number, so maybe it's 8, maybe,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But it's still a municipal number of, except unless it's next door to you. Okay, then it's a significant issue. Correct. Okay.
And there are firms that can help you with identifying the location of your STRs within your community, where that obviously costs money.
Yeah.
But there are opportunities to find out.
Well, this is about a two-week research project.
Yeah.
That was, somebody did for me.
Yeah.
And that's what they came up with.
Yeah. And so there's a public purpose in finding some of those, and the reason for that, and that's why I started with the hot statute and added finance here, is because if they owe hot taxes, you may not know.
Right.
But they might fit within that definition under the tax code.
Later on, when we get to it on how much something like this would cost, does it cost us money to collect hot taxes or not? Or back hot taxes or whatever? Are we adding staff time to it?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like, right now, are we?
Well, no, I
Well,
don't, not right now we are, but I mean, as we discuss this, I mean, budget costs is going to be in part of this deal. And, if you've got to add 2 people to keep track of it, well, that's an issue that needs to be at least discussed part of this group. Thank you. Keep going.
And
Okay.
then they do have, I understand that they do have software packages to monitor and look at, if for your town, the codes and the collection, the data, documentation such as that. Again, that's money.
Yeah, and I know some municipalities early on were trying to go directly to Airbnb and some of the other sources for the hot tax to be remitted to them. So what they were trying to do is enter into agreements with these corporations so that whenever the corporation would collect the dollars, they'd also remit the tax. And I think there's been some objection. I thought some of them had been successful at doing that, but apparently those were lengthy negotiations. So what we're finding is they'll say, we don't collect hot tax, but the property owner needs to. So someone who rents an Airbnb might come up, rent it out, and then the owner might say, oh, by the way, you owe me, I need $5 for the hot tax.
Now, so you've got hot tax. Can, if a residence is not 100% short-term rental, the half a year, whatever, and can somebody still homestead that and still get homestead reduction on their taxes? Or because they've leased it out for 6 months on a short-term or long-term, whatever?
Yeah. I don't think the lease mechanism changes anything for homestead.
Okay, as long as that's still their home of record.
Right, well, they're declared homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Those are good factual questions, though. And sometimes you would never know. So creating a record, emphasizing this some more. One of my associates, Rachel Raggio, not to be confused with Roja, she prepared this for me, and she's been representing Bernie and also Fredericksburg in some of these cases. Okay. Return to threshold questions for drafting. Consider results of work sessions. Draft to address problem areas. Short-term rental density, parking, inspections, life safety, nuisance type violations, permit transfers, due process. So permit transfers is something that we haven't talked about before, but That would be, and you kind of have a mechanism for that in your current existing ordinance. But you might have properties change hand even with commercial businesses that own the property and do nothing but short-term rental and claim that it's residential use. So you want to know who, and that's the purpose of a licensing scheme, is you want to know who is actually the landlord so you can regulate.
Yeah, Dean, if the town was going to regulate, meaning enforce ordinance, fines or whatever, can they differentiate between the owner, the leasee or tenant, or the management company? Because the landlord could be a corporation at a state, okay? In other words, who's the easiest to reachable that would actually do something?
Or, put another way, who's ultimately responsible?
Well,
You're saying the same thing, but who of all those options you just talked about, which you're right, who's responsible if it is a short-term rental?
well, I think we have an issue now, every now and then, where code enforcement wants to get a lawn mowed and the owner's out of town, and that's who they have to send it to.
Right.
And the tenant is not mowing.
Yeah.
So, okay, I didn't know if that was something that was already in the ordinance or that's something we could consider putting in an ordinance.
The existing ordinance
Right.
does include a penalty provision. So, and when we prosecute in municipal court, we can prosecute any of the above.
Okay,
So we usually find a way. There's difficulty though with prosecuting corporations. And the reason for that is a lot of times they'll just look at it like the cost of doing business. And so they'll pay the fine and even, do no contest and then just kind of walk away.
well, the idea would be to make it easiest for code enforcement to get a resolution.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Compliance is always key focus. Yeah.
So in a case like that, then what you're going to do then is you're going to put a contractor's lien on the property.
Yes. So we do have other remedies available to us, especially in nuisance cases. And so for a lot of these ordinances, what you'll see is a recital that attaches them to the zoning code, but also Chapter 54 of the local government code. And Chapter 54 of the local government code is your public nuisance code. So that gives you, that's where you have the opportunity to sue in district court and enforce. And those are for, dilapidated, substandard properties that are unfit for human habitation, or where you just have general code compliance issues. Okay, due process is always a concern, and that's a lot of the arguments. A lot of the arguments you see in these cases are due process arguments. It's, depriving me of a property right. You're depriving me or my tenants of the right to lawful assembly under the U.S. Constitution, Texas Constitution. So they'll make Texas constitutional and federal constitutional arguments for all kinds of rights. So due process is part of the administrative process that you would build out in your ordinance, where you give them an opportunity to be heard, but it also gives you an opportunity to just get rid of the cases if they don't show up and exercise those rights. So I'll skip forward here. Adoption, public hearings, still creating a record. At the public hearing, you want to provide the evidence, all the secondary effects that you've collected, all of the code violations, the locations, permitting violations, zoning violations. Put all those together, bring them up to the council, have staff provide evidence to the council showing the reason for regulating. That includes deliberation by the council, so we'll have findings in the ordinance and determinations in the ordinance as well. Encourage governing body to discuss broader areas of concern related to short-term rental operations. And so usually that's kind of like your effects that go beyond the immediate property, congestion, destroying neighborhood values, sense of neighborhood, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because that third one, the rights of non-STR property owners, that's who we're hearing from,
Yeah.
mostly.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a good point, because what we have is we have municipalities attempting to regulate and going up and down the court system. Then you also have the HOAs that are doing the same thing. Okay, and a lot of the HOAs are going up and down, and they're finding that their restrictive covenants aren't specific enough to actually regulate. And so the argument could be there that if you did have restrictive covenants that were voted on by a majority of the HOA, would it be defensible in limiting the ability for someone to have a short-term rental in your HOA? And so that's why I say you see two different tracks. One is kind of the municipality track, and then also a lot of the cases with the HOAs involved, where people have challenged the restrictive covenants.
So what you're saying is that even an HOA having it in their covenants is still not a guarantee of preventing it, if I heard that correctly.
It depends on how you craft your covenants. That's what I've seen in some of these cases.
Okay, but this wasn't an issue when almost all our HOAs were formed, so more than likely, Jeff, I don't know about your HOA or Steve, it's not in there.
Yeah.
So they would have to put it in, or that would be one of the first things that somebody in this town could do, is get their HOA to initiate something.
Yeah, and they'd have to talk to their HOA attorney.
No, I understand.
I'm not trying to make a recommendation.
I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to get a sequence in mind. Okay.
Yeah,
But even at that-
you're not alone in the potential to regulate. And when we're dealing with real property issues, I mean, and you have established HOAs with restrictive covenants, maybe it's possible to craft a restrictive covenant that the entire HOA can vote on. That would prohibit them. So that's something I'm seeing HOAs explore, but also in the courts are looking at the actual language of the restrictive covenants. And some of those cases, they're saying, you know what? It just doesn't, it was never intended. And so you lose.
But even at that, at the HOA level, it's the same issue. They would have to provide evidence, documentation, all that stuff, right? You could create it, but to your point, everything we're talking about here still gets back to tracking, following, evidence, documentation, records. It's complicated.
Right.
It is complicated and it's risky. And again, it's a lot of the arguments start with constitutional rights, but also real property rights. And so are you taking those away with your regulation?
I have a question for you, Dean.
Yep.
Let's reverse this a little bit. The motel, hotel, and long-term residential, how are they regulated as far as, is there any differentiation between the long-term residents, like, was it Wood Springs?
Yeah.
Versus the Hampton Inn?
Yes. Yes, there are differences. So the definition of resident is different under the hot tax statute. So once you get past 30 days, you're a resident and not just merely a short-term renter.
So we have an established statutory landmark, basically, or I can't think of the word.
Yeah. You have a framework that's built into the statute that would allow you at least to collect hot tax on those who are doing short-term rentals. But then the question becomes, if you do that, are you blessing their operation?
So a clarification question. So let's say the town of Trophy Club has an ordinance for short-term rentals. Does that apply to HOAs as well?
It would apply to all single-family residential structures townwide.
Okay, so there's no reason for an HOA to go in and do their own if the town has an ordinance regarding short-term rentals, correct?
So it's two separate issues. One is a real property right.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking about covenants running with the land.
Okay.
Right. So you have restrictions that you're bound by in an HOA that touch your land. And we don't do that here unless we attach a lien to the property because they failed to comply.
Okay, thanks.
It's another question? Oh, okay. All right. So these are some more deliberations, adoption, things to consider when you're adopting the ordinance. Still building a record. Deliberations encourage governing body to discuss broad areas of concern. We talked about that. Affordable housing, preservation of neighborhood character, rights of non-STR property owners. The implementation, how long does it take? What avenue do you want to follow before you're adopting your ordinance? What are your objectives for doing so? Some of this is tailored to less sophisticated municipalities, but you just never know. Software capacity, you do have people out there knocking doors trying to figure out who's short-term renting. Like you said, it could take a while to even figure out who's really out there advertising. And the thing is, you could advertise short-term rental today and then take yourself off the website, and then we would probably never know.
You're good.
Or jump around different providers. Mm-hmm. All right, do any of your boards, commissions need training for short-term rental specific issues, zoning board of adjustment, if implementing mechanism like special exception? So I think there are a lot of different tools you could use before it reaches a council level. If you're going to adopt it using your zoning code, and then try to figure out, how many to provide adequate due process, how many steps do they need to comply with before they can actually sue the town for deprivation of some right.
Have you said that your company has crafted some of these already?
We have, and some of them have been challenged.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're trying to work within the framework. So it's a moving target. Courts seem to be doing different things at different appellate levels. So it's it's kind of impossible to know sometimes. So that's the whole point of building the record of creating evidence. It's all in anticipation of litigation.
So at this point, you don't really have one method or the other that would be, in your mind, preferred.
I like going the zoning course. I think that gives you some additional insulation. And, if the standard is whether or not your decision is arbitrary or capricious, are you just, hitting them with a fine just to do it because you want to hurt somebody? If that's the standard, then I think it's easier to defend when you do have evidence that's built in and findings and determinations by the P&Z, but then also recommendation to council.
Dean, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked earlier about zoning, and I was about to think that wouldn't be a good avenue because you said the courts have looked at the zoning and have said, but it's not a commercial property, it is a residential property.
Yeah.
And then they leaned more towards the property owner's rights. So how do you think that crafting this on a zoning path would be more beneficial than town ordinance?
Yeah, that's a great question. The reason why it would be a better path is just because of the administrative process. And so what you do is you give an opportunity for them to wade through the process. And if they fail to do so, then you have some insulation from the lawsuit that they might bring later.
Could you draft your ordinance with due process clauses?
Yes.
Would that hold as much weight as your zoning?
I think so. Yeah, we can figure out a way to craft them either way. I mean, the risk is always there. I like a zoning avenue.
Whichever is more effective.
Yeah. So if I'm just thinking about the Grapevine case, for example, the argument was that it's already contained in their definition of single family residential in zoning. But the court looked at it and said, or the argument from the city was that it's precluded because it's not specifically included, right? That's how we do zoning. And the court looked at it and said, no, it's contemplated in single family.
So if we specifically rewrote our zoning ordinances to
Yes.
address short-term rentals and single-family residence
Yes.
and beef that up, that would probably be stronger to the courts because it already contains all like special exceptions and those type of due
Right.
process.
Yeah.
That already is there. We're not starting from the base. We're just beefing them up.
We just have to get very surgical about the language we use to define short-term rentals.
Thank you.
Are you getting, you're going on to the suits?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
You want me to skip ahead?
No. Okay, what I was going to say, for me, I don't know how anybody else up here says, but I don't need you to go through all these case studies.
Okay.
Okay?
No, I want to go back though, back
I
to the.
still want to continue the conversation.
The implementation part, I think the one after that's even more important, the enforcement part. I'd like to spend a good time there because that's a big one.
Yeah, maybe what we talk about are next steps so that we, what is a first step? And let's talk about that. And then the next step in terms of criticality, you know what I'm saying? Because a first step is this documentation and I think, or gathering information. Go for it.
I think everybody up here knows I'm an advocate of trying to do something on short-term rentals, but
I know.
to reality, I don't want to spend any legal funds on it. I don't want to be sued. I don't want to have to argue the case. If I have somebody who did a research project for me and did 6 short-term rentals, BROBs or whatever, if somebody could get a better list than that or more lists, I'd love them to send it to me. But if I go on this one list, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But
This list, I happen to know that there were a couple of people that stopped at when we were at the voting polls who were complaining about the short-term rentals in their neighborhood. Their addresses aren't on here.
Well,
I
that's what I
know
say. I don't know.
and that's
if
what
this
I
is a
mean.
complete
There are
list,
people
but-
we don't
but
know.
I'm not
That's the
asking
thing.
staff time right now,
Yeah.
not this instance, but if some resident out there has more information,
Yeah.
please, let's have it brought forward. But this is a long-term issue, this trend towards renting and things like that. So we have an ordinance. You've already acknowledged that it needs updating. I'd like to ask to be updated. That would be step one for what you're trying to say. In other words, and use some more common sense language, please. And bring that, but that covers all leases, period.
That's all leases, right.
That's everybody.
It doesn't give a time frame, so it's.
No.
Yep.
That's correct. That's just bring it up to date. That's step one. Then step two is we don't have a complaint foundation.
Correct.
So we have no basis to stand on to do something. I don't know how to create a complaint foundation unless you were to have people get permits on them or have some tracking. If we just started tracking rentals. Okay, as a step two.
Right.
Once again, we're not recreating the wheel. We're not asking staff to go out and, start a whole new computer code.
No, but if we have the address, that's what we need. We need
Yeah.
addresses.
That's correct, yeah. But we at least start that foundation, and that lays to my way of, to get a foundation. And if you go farther than that without having a complaint foundation or whatever, I don't know. Whether you could go into zoning or spend time trying to work with P&Z to update something, I'll beg off to one of the other council people.
But if we only have a few complaints, that's not a very strong standing, correct?
Right.
So we also have to look at a period of time to collect this. So it's not over a period of 2 months, it's a period of probably, in our situation, we don't have that much. So I would think that step one and start looking at it, just collecting information and see how long it goes. At what point do you pull the trigger, there's a lot involved in this. This is not just a simple thing to do, which I think sometimes maybe residents think that that's the case, in that just come out and take care of the noise, please. You know?
Well, if you treat everybody equally, whether it doesn't matter whether it's
Yeah.
a rental or owner, that everybody's treated equally, but you were able to know who's renting and leasing and be able to track that way, that starts a foundation. And once again, this is long-term. Who knows what's going to happen 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but at least we have a base to start with.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's wisdom in waiting. And that's because you have so many cases that are going up and down through the court system.
Well, my basis of recommending to the council that we wait after reviewing what we did tonight and everything is, I'm not interested in paying legal fees. So.
Anybody interested in paying legal fees?
Well, to me, it's not just legal fees, that's one thing. This is a monumental,
Yes.
Yeah.
thing that we have to start getting our arms around. There's certain steps we need to start taking. I think we've documented those. But, I'm not saying let's not pursue this because of legal fees. No. I'm saying it's so big, let's take it piece by piece. Let's start with the steps we're talking about, right? See where it takes us. I gotta believe in my heart of hearts there's more than 6, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, we can't tell. I mean,
I just did a search and found 8 on VRBO.
Yeah. In TrophyClub.
And again, yep, and then on Airbnb had 8, but I'm not sure, they're probably
Right.
the same
same.
ones. I would imagine. I didn't go into that type of.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying.
Well-
Because of the timing.
Well, I think that if we start with these 1, 2, 3 steps, it's not a priority step way up there, but it is in our work plan somewhere. I think it shows good faith to the town that we've listened. We're taking reasonable steps related to what we really see the issue being. We hear a little bit, we don't hear some, we hear some, we don't have documentation. And I think, honestly, one of the big issues is that of parking. The people who rent the places don't adhere to the ordinances, and then the neighbors don't have any place to go to get help during this rental period of time. Does that make sense? And so I don't know what we can do to shore that up. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. One thing to also keep in mind is that a lot of the secondary effects are things that are contained within our other nuisance ordinances, right?
Yes.
So if someone does have a complaint about a neighbor, parking violations, noise violations, things like that, they should contact the town, and we can make sure that we can enforce the existing nuisance ordinances as they apply to all properties.
Well, maybe that's something we can do to communicate to the town regarding this whole issue. You do have a right to complain, and we've raised it, we're putting more in front of us to think about it, so that if you are concerned that this is short-term rental and it's out of control, we will respond. How about that idea, doing some communication to the town that we're going to help? Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
so we've heard a lot from Dean. Obviously, you're doing the whole presentation. We've all weighed in. Brandon, haven't really heard a lot from a town perspective. What's your initial thoughts?
Sure. So as Dean's outlined, the process of banning outright short-term rentals really is not getting a lot of steam when it comes to, progress at the state level, and certainly with those cities and towns that are trying to do that across Texas. Property rights get in the way of that and end up costing unnecessary legal fees and things like that. Starting to build the case for what are the types of things that need to be regulated for short-term rentals here in Trophy Club becomes the basis of what you would use to then have for a program that would require registration that imposes other restrictions on these properties. Okay, so the idea here is, how do you create the casework for saying, you have additional parking regulations, you have additional occupancy regulations that begin to address these secondary effects that are happening. So those become more defensible because you build a caseload, right? And so the process of going through and starting to identify what are the rental properties in Trophy Club, and honestly, not just the short-term rentals,
Right.
but the long-term rentals as well. We know we have 25. I know that number is bigger than 25 on it overall, and so we need to do a little bit better job making sure that we identify all those properties. Begins once we have at least a better percentage of compliance with knowing where those properties are, what properties and addresses they are. We can then begin to build the cases for the types of violations we're seeing, the types of calls, the complaints, and things like that, that then begins to kind of say, okay, so these are the things that we're seeing. These are the reasons why we need to impose these types of restrictions on these properties for it. And then from there, then you kind of start to put together, here's how a ordinance here would comply with addressing the secondary effects that we're seeing for that. As you mentioned, that is a lot of work, right? That takes time to build the caseload, identify the properties, build the caseload, see what those look like, and then engage the public, obviously, in that we'll have to have we'll have to have some public hearings, both at P&Z and then obviously here as well at the town council level for that. So, but I think that begins as we begin kind of the beginning steps of this, identifying the registration, identifying the rental properties here in Trophy Club, starting to put together the list of citation, the list of nuisances that are being and complaints that are happening against those properties for it. I think those are kind of two very good early steps, as well as kind of just doing some initial cleanup work on the rental registration ordinance itself, which doesn't have that name. It's the single family residence ordinance. Licensing. I'm sorry, single family residence licensing ordinance, which is complicated, right? Because that doesn't tell you anything about what that section does. So things like that we can clean up within the ordinance and at least have a language cleanup session for it before we even kind of begin to work those things. So
Yeah, and that, just to add to that, that ordinance touches on buildings with 3 units or less than 3 units. So 3 units or more, your multifamily, if they're doing short-term rentals, you wouldn't be regulating them under that same licensing. Yeah.
Okay,
So it sounds like all we need to do is clean up what we have existing and start building the database.
Yep.
correct.
And solicit for input from people that may know of the residences. And then I would suggest hitting your staff, accounting for hot tax, fire department for occupancy and police department. I mean, hit all the internal organizations and find out what the hot buttons could be for those items.
Absolutely. Yep. And then obviously as part of that, it's also managing the public expectation with this, right? The second you start to talk about short-term rentals, the natural way of that conversation goes, well, let's just ban them. Right.
Yeah.
So once you start regulating them, then there's also a lot of public messaging here that has to go out, help educate the public as to the benefits of registration, how banning isn't really an option, right? And how that can help in the scheme of things to make better, less of the secondary effects in the neighborhoods.
so really that's another step, a communication process. We need a
Big one.
communication model that helps to say what we're doing, how you can help also. Also I'm sitting up here thinking that when people talk with me about, oh, I've got a house down the street that's rented, I've got a house down, I think a fear factor sets in that we're becoming all rentals or we're becoming all STRs because there's somebody here. You know what I mean? It becomes a very personal thing. I think my whole neighborhood's going to become rentals. So it just creates fear that is unfounded. That's all I'm saying. And if we could give good facts that we have, that helps us to operate from more knowledge. Other comments? Then it is 6:54 and we are closing this work
Good
session.
job, Dean, thank you.
And we will start again at 7 o'clock, please.
Oh, yeah, so they get their attention.
What brought you here tonight?
Okay, we will,
Okay.
good evening, Trophy Club. It is my privilege to introduce to you your mayor for the day, Miss Isabella Ramos.
It is 7 p.m. I'm calling to order the Trophy Club Council meeting. Today is June 24th. There is a quorum present. Please stand for the prayer and the pledges.
My name is Reverend David in prayer. My address is 2868 Nottingham. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, draw our hearts to you, guide our minds, fill our imaginations, and control our will, that we may wholly be yours, dedicated to you, to the service of your people. And as your servant, St. Francis of Assisi, prayed, so we pray that you make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us show love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is by giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Use us as you will to meet the needs of your people, and for the glory of your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
If you would remain standing and join in our pledges.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Isabella, we get to read a proclamation to you, okay? You ready for this? Office of the Mayor Proclamation. Whereas Isabella Ramos is entering the 4th grade at Beck Elementary, Isabella's mom and dad, Neil and Megan, have been residents of Trophy Club since 2012, and she has one younger sister, Alexandra Ramos. And Isabella enjoys participating in Multicultural Night through her school to share the Puerto Rican culture that is her heritage, from her favorite beaches to her favorite foods, drinks, and music. She also attends art shows to showcase her passion of painting, sketching, and drawing. And whereas Isabella has played volleyball for 2 years on the Setting Stars, recently receiving the passing reward during her last season. She enjoys reading, dancing to her favorite songs, going to the Rangers games, family movie nights, and swimming with friends. Now, therefore, I, Jeanette Tiffany, Mayor of the Town of Trophy Club, Texas, and on behalf of the Trophy Club Town Council, do hereby proclaim June the 24th, 2024 as, you want to read that?
Isabella.
There she is, proclaimed and signed by Jeanette Tiffany, Mayor. Thank you. Isabella, you just get so much stuff, more than I get. So here is a gift to you from the town of Trophy Club. Would you like to read it? Come over here. Come over here. What does it say?
Mayor for the day, Isabella Ramos.
624. You want to hit it to make sure it works? It works. Oh, you're. We've had a great time, and I want to just say thank you to the mom and dad and the sister. They have just been exceptional in making this a wonderful experience for Isabella. She learned a script. She learned how to shake hands. And I want to also say thank you very much to Officer Sears, who took you on the tour of the police department. We were there for an hour, were we not? It was just a fabulous experience, as well as to Tammy Dixon, who put all this together for you, Jill Lind, and we just think it's a wonderful team in our town to support people like yourself. And may God bless you as you grow up and be a mayor. Very good.
Grandfather,
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
grandfather had the
Oh, I'm sorry, the grandfather had flowers.
We got to do
Please.
flowers.
Yes. One.
Back up one for another photo.
You want your grandmother to come with you? There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much. One more item here.
Thank you, Mayor. I forgot to.
You be sure to take that to school next year. You have a show and tell. Do we have some public announcements?
Probably some public
I mean,
comments.
public comments?
No, ma'am.
No public comment.
We have somebody signed up for the public hearing
Okay,
later.
fine. Great, thank you. Okay, thank you, guys, everybody being here, and we will proceed to the community spotlight, and that is our team of Trophy Club Stars and Stripes.
Good evening, everybody. We're here to kind of give a recap on Trophy Club Stars and Stripes, how it started, what to expect, and where it's going. And I don't know how to operate the presentation.
Oh. We need that.
Okay. Yeah, so we're here to talk about Flag Planting 2024. And Mindy, if you'll take it.
Okay, so the history of flag planting. Flag planting began in 2012 by Michelle Reed and our mayor, Jeanette Tiffany, and a generous donation from Dr. Matthews to purchase flags. Planting and harvesting began with 15 captains and their team of volunteers planting and harvesting 11,000 flags along the primary streets through town. Each year, more neighborhoods and streets would be added, and more volunteers were eager to step up. We have since expanded into additional cities and town. This year, we'll have over 40,000 flags planted by approximately 175 volunteers in Trophy Club, Westlake, and Roanoke. Okay, so this is the timeline of when we start through when we pick up. So January through June, we start with our meetings, begin communication, confirm volunteers, collect flag payments and donations, and plan events where volunteers will pick up their flags. And then on June 14th, which is Flag Day, we order the flags each year, which It's Tiffany's idea. Very smart.
Makes it easy to remember.
Yes. And so on July 1st, which is next Monday, just found out, we have our hosting event where everyone will come and pick up flags. So we're going to have the South Lake Methodist Hospital come out, and they're sponsoring the event for us. And we're going to have food and drinks, and Kona Ice will be there, and we're going to hand out flags. We'll also give instructions to everybody. And then on July 2nd, that's when everyone in the community will start planting flags.
And that is where, just to clarify for everybody?
It's going to be at Harmony Park, sorry.
Thank you.
So at 6. Yes, at 6. On July 2nd, that's when we plant our flags. So we don't have a specific time when we plant the flags. It's whenever you can coordinate. But that is the day that we all start planting the flags. And so that, if you haven't experienced it, it's pretty incredible to see all of them go up. And then blowing in the wind is really cool when you're driving through town. So on July 5th, that's when we harvest. Harvesting is pulling up the flags and rolling them up in bundles. That's when, if you cannot do that yourself, then we will enlist some student volunteers to help with that. We'll just need to be notified if you cannot harvest your own flags, and then we'll schedule someone to help with that. And then on July 15th, that's the deadline to return damaged or faded flags for retirement. And then we'll also, on July 1st, we'll make sure to give specific instructions for how everything is going to go. That way, there's no questions. Come each date, we'll make sure that everyone knows what they're doing. Okay, so just like I said before, Trophy Club Stars and Stripes is teaming up with Methodist South Lake Medical Center for our flag pickup party next Monday at 6 at Harmony Park. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be able to meet everybody and hand out the flags for each community, and also just kind of fellowship and eat and have a good time.
So in putting this whole event together, it takes many different types of volunteers. And I'm just going to kind of give a description of what each type is, because a lot of people might be a little bit confused. So our route captains are what we qualify as those who would do the primary streets through town. Your Trophy Lake, Trophy Club Drive, Durango is one, Indian Creek, Trophy Wood, those, like any of your ins and outs all the way through. So that is a route captain. Those volunteers do not purchase their own flags. Those come from the town and any other generic donation that we get. One of our primary locations that we put all the really good flags is the parade route. So that's going to be the whole section that the whole parade goes around. So Bobcat, Trophy Club Drive, Durango, and Parkview. Those are always going to be brand new flags every year. And from there out, we just kind of recycle them throughout town until they are faded and done, and then they get retired. Our street captains are those who do not live in an HOA. They're going to be, if you picture like the neighborhood across the street from Lakeview Elementary, that's not an HOA, they're all individuals. So what that means is somebody on that street is going to have to step up and say, I want flags on my street. It's going to take $45 for us to cover our street, ask their neighbors to pitch in, provide us with the $45, and we get them the flags. Then they would actually store those on their street, whichever resident wants to put them in their garage, those get stored in their garage. We have HOA captains. So we have a captain for the Highlands, we have a captain for Canterbury Hills, Churchill Downs, the Lakes, Turnberry. If you have an HOA, that's really nice because your HOA dues can help purchase flags. Does that happen to cover all of them? No, not always. So there is additional donations asked by the residents. Let's see. And then we have started something new recently where we team up with student volunteers. This is a win-win for us, the town, and the students because they are eligible to receive volunteer hours towards any of their school affiliations or Green Court or whatever the case might be. They are allowed to turn in their hours and receive credit for that. And I want to give special credit to Luke Little, who has been an absolute asset to us because he has gathered a massive group of student volunteers who are going to help us harvest. So any volunteer out there that is a route captain, street captain, you're part of the HOA, and if you're unable to pick up your flags, please let us know because we have some students just waiting to be told where to go and are ready to harvest those flags, roll them up, and turn them back in. Helpful tools. We've got our flag and wagon. A lot of people will use a golf cart, but we also encourage everybody, put your flags in a wagon and just tote that thing along as you go. It keeps them off the ground. It keeps them easily accessible. It's fantastic. We're a big fan of the flag and wagon. Then there's the infamous tool. So when you plant a flag, especially on Indian Creek, that ground can get kind of dry, so you don't want to just go stick in the flag into a dry ground. It's going to break the stick, and then it's going to look wonky. So we pre-poke a hole, and this tool, it's the perfect size to just put it in there, drop the flag right in, and it stays. It's wonderful. We will have these available for all of the volunteers at Harmony Park if you need one, or if you already have one, that's wonderful, but we will have these on site. An electric drill also works really good. Indian Creek again, lovely. But yes, an electric drill works really good if it's especially hard ground. And then definitely take water with you. We also will have a lot of water, so as you're signing up to plant your flags, let us know what time of day you're going out, and we will come out, meet you, we will deliver some water, we will take pictures, we want to get all kinds of this, we want to document this. Check out the Facebook page, it's got years of pictures of everybody participating, and it's so cute with the little kids. Speaking of, the process, so flags should be planted 15 feet apart, 2 feet from the curb. That way cars that park, they open the door, it's not gonna hit the flags, they're not gonna get knocked down. With the exception, Canterbury Hills and the Highlands, you will plant flags along the sidewalk, like on the curb, there's a little hole between the grass and the sidewalk. Put it in there, that's to avoid sprinklers and drip lines and all that stuff. We don't wanna puncture sprinkler lines. Prep a hole, like I said earlier, with the flag tool, with the tool. We want to make sure flags are upright. The town looks absolutely amazing when the flags are upright, blowing in the wind, spaced apart, everything's great. When they fall over, it just kind of looks a little disheveled. Trophy Club is better than that. So we want to make sure that they're upright, looking good. If you are driving through and you see one that's knocked down, or maybe a couple of them, maybe somebody's sprinklers knocked some stuff down, please send us an email and we will get out there and we will fix those pronto. Harvesting, it is important that you only harvest the flags that you planted. It's really nice that people want to help, but it also kind of creates a little bit of confusion because not all flags get stored at the same location. The primary routes, they get stored here at Town Hall. HOA flags get stored within the HOA. Street flags get stored at that person's home. So it's important that we don't keep get everything all mixed up. Like I said, please let us know what time of day you're planting so that we can capture all of that. This year we've got some lacrosse players and some baseball players that are going to be out there, so we're really going to capture them, and that way they can go out and show that they're active in the community as well. If you post your own pictures, please tag Trophy Club Stars and Stripes. We want to be able to have everything out there. We'll share it as best we can with the whole community. And a massive thank you, because this is a big effort from all of the residents throughout town, and I mean, it's really cool, but it takes the volunteers stepping up. So we are thoroughly grateful for each and every one of you.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, and then I have one final.
Okay, go for it.
So we also do the Veterans Float every year, and we are in search of a truck and a trailer so we can get our veterans in their parade of patriots. The town is gracious enough to decorate and pay for the decorations for the float. We just need a truck with a hitch and a trailer.
And you're saying a flatbed trailer?
A flatbed truck, yes. So if you know anybody that has one, would you please reach out to us at trophyclubstarsandstripes@gmail.com.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements on this? So.
Yes, I ask everybody to mow the first 3 feet of the curb before Tuesday.
And Dennis mows his own, so if anybody needs any help, Dennis would be more than willing.
And sprinkle on Monday.
And sprinkle them.
Yeah, and don't pick up your flags when they're wet. Any other comments, questions? July the 4th in Trophy Club is the place to be. And when those flags are flying, it's amazing. All of a sudden you wake up and there they are, and then all of a sudden you wake up and they're gone. I don't ever know how that happens, but it does, and it's just wonderful.
Mayor, I'd just like to tell them thank you.
Yes.
I mean, this has taken a lot of work, and we really appreciate you doing it for us. Thank you.
Yes.
It's a community event, and I really like how you're engaging the full community. Thank you very much. Good job. Good job.
you.
Thank you very much. What's for dinner Monday night? Oh, yes. Yes, okay. Working for you, Trophy Club. Anybody comments? Anything?
May I
Luann?
start?
Yeah.
Well, first I want to say thank you to everyone that has or is serving on a town board or commission. We really need you. We really appreciate you. And it's time again for new applicants. I'll read a little bit of this blurb, but I just wanted you to know how much we appreciate those of you that will come and will make application and will visit with us and then serve your town. The town's boards, commissions, and corporations play a vital role in advising the town council on policy and services. We need you. We need your input. We need you to vet things for us. You need your recommendations. So we are asking for your help. You're a partner in this running of this town and its services, and we hope that a little bit later I hear that we're going to get an update on our wonderful Trophy Club website, where we've completely revamped the application process. It's so sophisticated and professional. You'll be so impressed. So later you'll hear a little bit about that, but we do want you to go in there before July 30th, because we will be accepting applications for the boards and commissions for those terms that are expiring. Be sure to fill out a new application if you're wanting to run again, if your term is expiring, or if you're a new volunteer, please do so. So I'm going to leave the rest of that for a little bit later in the presentation. I think we're going to hear a little bit more about the mechanics. Mayor, there's one more thing you and I discussed, which is just so exciting, and I know there are a lot of techies out there, and I'm not a techie, but Dallas Morning News Sunday paper, Dave Lieberman, had posted a little blurb on House Bill 4, which is otherwise known as the Texas Data Privacy and Security Act. And what is so exciting about this, and I'm going to try to talk about, I have a lot of trouble with this guy's name, State Representative
Giovanni.
No, don't do that. Capriglio.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead.
Say it, Steve. Say it again.
Capriglione.
Thank you. Anyway, he's the one that's taking charge of this bill, and I talked to his office about it. It's going into effect July 1. And just bullet points, what it does for you is it gives you extended rights in your privacy on how your data is mined and used. You can go to any company, other than a few exclusions like small businesses, and you can ask for what data they have on you, and you have an option of doing 4 things. You can, I'm going to tell you real quick what they are, because this is just so fundamental in your rights. You can edit the data they have on you. You can correct the data they have on you. You can ask that all your data, past, present, and future, be deleted, or you can do nothing. What our state representative recommended is that you first go to Facebook, and you go to Google, and you go to Twitter, and you control how your preferences that are now all logged in somebody's business are released. So anyway, that happens July 1st. The website will be under the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. So it was important, and I thought we all need to know that these rights are coming up.
Good information. Okay. Anything to say?
This past Saturday, hats off to Chase and his team. We had a gathering over at Harmony Park to talk about future pickleball options. And I know that's a hot button for a lot of people in our town. So Chase, thank you. It's the first of 2, correct? There's a second one coming up. If you didn't get a chance to go Saturday, Chase, when's the next one, date and time?
So it's Saturday at Independence Park at 4 to 6 p.m. But also anyone that wants to, I've been receiving emails all week. If you want to email me at cls@trophyclub.org, I'll pass those comments on to our designers as well.
And what it is, they have a whole team out there. You can see some ideas, some high-level thoughts about locations, certainly give your input, so good opportunity for community feedback.
Okay, I'll just say one thing that Matt Cox and I went to the council meeting of the government, North Central Texas Council of Governments. And there was a panel that was talking about the upcoming World Cups games 2026. Now, wrap your head around this. There will be 9 games in 38 days, meaning they compare it to 9 Super Bowls in 38 days. And so this is all about North Central Texas, Dallas, Metroplex, Fort Worth, Denton, everybody's engaged in it. So you can imagine we're going to get some spillover because the economy is going to be like 500 million. That's what they expect. So, and I know that they've already contacted the chief of police here for help. So it's beginning to get in there as to how everybody's going to be integrated to support it. But it was a very interesting conversation. 2026, 9 soccer game. Now, who in here plays soccer? Soccer, there we got 2. There you go, yay. So in 2 years, you can go to the World Cup games. So, other comments? Good? We are ready for you, Mr. Brandon.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. A couple of updates. One of them we already covered, pickleball. So please come join us on Saturday. That is June 29th from 4 to 6 at Independence Park for that second pickleball engagement. Thank you to everyone who participated in the first one. 4th of July, we've heard about the Stars and Stripes and the planting of flags. But 4th of July celebration in Trophy Club is the event to be at. Starts today early with a Patriot 5K and fun run. Then we have the Parade of Patriots, and we end the evening with a spectacular fireworks celebration. So please join us for all of those events or just a part of it during the day on the 4th of July. Upcoming boards and commission meetings on July 15th, we have 2. Those are the next meetings that are coming up, so it'll be a few weeks for that. But Parks and Rec Board has a meeting on July 15th at 6 p.m. We also have the Economic Development Corporation meeting at 7 p.m. that same evening. Let's see. And as mentioned by Councilwoman Oldham, the applications for the upcoming fiscal year 2025 for boards and commission members are now open. And our wonderful town secretary, Ms. Tammy Dixon, is going to take us through that new web portal so that everyone can learn how to use it properly.
Even me?
Well,
most people can use it properly.
Hello, Mayor, Council, thank you.
We are going to become proficient before this.
It's an easy button. Just gonna click on it. It's gonna work. Okay, I'm pleased to announce the overhaul of our new boards and commissions website. An easy way to get there, you go to trophyclub.org/boards. We have a few different redirects. We have a lot of advertising campaigns that the marketing department has put links to, and all of those will bring you to our homepage on our website. There is an application button that you click on, and it takes you to our new boards and commissions portal. It's very clean, it's very easy to use, and it gives you all information that you could possibly want on a board. For example, I'll click on animal shelter, and as feedback from our work session earlier this month, for our upcoming handbook, also on this website, on each board, you'll have a link to its creating authority. So whether it's the town charter, the state law, or the code of ordinances, it'll take a direct link to that information. Also has the composition of each board and director, a description, and it lists all of the board members. As we build this database in the future, it'll keep track of all of the history of board members, so you can see when they've served in the past. You can click on any of the board member names. Let me go back to another board.
happen to, the Building Standards Commission is one board that you may serve more than one on. So for an example, if you click on the Building Standards Commission, and I'm going to pick on Doug Harper, if you click on his name, it will show that he's currently serving on 2 boards. So it's kind of nice to know where all the members are, where they've served. It also shows on each site or on each board, over onto the right, it has board details. It'll tell you how many openings there are, how many vacancies there are. And if you go into one, for example, Charter Review Commission, we are not currently soliciting applications for that. So when they click in, it shows that the positions are vacant, but there's not a button for them to apply from this site. At the top of the portal, they can apply for a position, and it takes the application. We don't have a limit on the number of boards, so the max is set at 10, so somebody can apply for more than one board. There's certain boards, planning and zoning, I think building standards commissions, if those boards are selected, it will add additional questions for the council to consider during the interview process. Another way to, backed out of there too much, another way, if you go into a particular board, if you're in Building Standards Commission and this is the only board you want to apply for, you'll see that it's available for applications. You click on it, and that's where somebody would complete their application. If during the process they're like, oh, I wanted to apply for planning and zoning, they can easily go up to the boards and seats section, edit the information, and then they can select additional boards to be considered for. We think the information's straightforward, clean, and we hope it's a valuable tool for the council and the members.
All right, thank you, Tamara.
Great job.
Yeah,
Awesome.
good.
Yep. Yeah, it's an exciting new portal where, so obviously, if anyone is interested in serving on a board or commission, please go to that website, fill out information, and that will be considered by the evaluation committee that has been put together by the town council for that in the upcoming weeks and months. All right, and then just a couple of upcoming events to remember. First of all, we do not have a town council meeting on July 8th. So the first regular meeting in July is canceled. So that means the only meeting we will have will be on July 22nd. And then on July 15th, upcoming here in a few weeks, July 15th, there is the Breakfast with Tiffany as well, starting at 9 a.m. That's at the same place as the Starbucks inside of Tom Thumb. And that's all that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have a civics tip from Dean.
Another one?
Yes. Legit.
Big day, Dean.
Well, so I asked the mayor about this, and she thought it maybe would be a good idea to help Isabella understand what kind of power she really had today.
Isabella, would you like to stand up? Come over here and see him. Come on.
So it says here, and this is in the town charter, and I'm reading the section. It's section 1.02.001, signatory authority of town and town of mayor and town manager. And so the sections here are broken into different sections for signatory authority. So the mayor is authorized to execute all documents as authorized by the town's home rule charter and or as otherwise expressly authorized by official action of the town council. So town council can say, mayor, sign this, and the mayor will have the power to sign it. Otherwise, under the charter, the mayor can sign basically anything that the charter tells her she can sign. So conveying property, contracts. Now, the town manager, to make things administratively easier for everyone, the town manager has authority to sign contracts up to $25,000. So that's kind of where it splits off there.
Thank you. Isabella, that's your town attorney. Thank you.
That's the big stuff.
Yeah. $1 million stuff. That's
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean. All right, let's go to the consent agenda,
Consent
please.
agenda. Item 4, consider approval of the town council meeting minutes for the May 28th, 2024 regular meeting, the June 6th and 7th, 2024 town council retreats, and the June 10th, 2024 regular meeting. Item 5, consider a developers agreement between the town of Trophy Club and Beldonia Townhomes LLC for the Beldonia Townhomes and authorizing the mayor or her designee to execute same on behalf of the town.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move.
Motion to approve.
Okay, go for it, Steve.
I'm making the
I mean,
motion to approve
Okay.
as written.
And what are you going to do, Steve?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to be going into a public hearing.
Item 6, case PD AMD 24002, PD 30, amendment multi-tenant monument. Conduct a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending Plan Development District, PD 30, to allow a multi-tenant monument sign with CEVMS display located at 2200 through 2300 South 114 on Lot 2, Block A of the Trophy Club Town Center edition of the C. Medlin Survey, abstract number 823, Denton County, Texas.
Okay, before I open the public hearing, I'm going to again review the steps for a public hearing so we're all clear about that. First thing is I'll open the public hearing. The staff will present. The applicant will present. Those who wish to speak in favor and any wish to speak in opposition and the rebuttal if applicable. And I'll close the public hearing, state the time, at which time then the council will discuss and vote. Thank you. Open the public hearing at 7:36.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So as Tammy stated, Town Center 2, they are electronic variable message sign, CEVMS. The reason that I said that in 3 parts is there are 3 parts to this amendment. So I was going to go through those really quick. So number 1, PD 30 does allow for a monument sign under just SUP. So if it was just a monument sign coming to P&Z and council for development identification. So if it said PD 30, Town Center, whatever, it would come as a SUP. Y'all would look at size, lighting, things like that. So number 2, because of the display, the electronic display, the ordinance also allows that to come to council for approval. But the one kicker is, and this is the number 3, is there's no monument sign, freestanding development sign that allows for advertising for tenants. So we packaged this up and kind of bundled this up as an amendment, as opposed to, I'd gotten some questions on why not a SUP. So that's the reason why we bundled this up as an amendment. As proposed, the structure is angled to face 114. It is specified to be 35 feet tall, 17 feet wide. They will have, here's a rendition. They've got 20 illuminated tenant panels, and the LED up on top is 128 square feet. That's 8 by 16. Put it a little bit into perspective, we've got our marquees. They're 6 by 6, our marquees. So just perspective there. They'll have a stone veneer on the front and the back. There's nothing on the back. You can see on the far right. That's the back side of what it would look like. We had a public hearing notice that we sent out, as we always do, according to Texas Local Government Code and our zoning regulations. As of this evening, we had 1 inquiry from the HOA, the townhomes. So in our circle that we sent out that notice, they inquired, they requested renditions. I sent that back. They said, thank you, looks good. It was just, that's really it. We also have, since P&Z meeting, we've had 3 emails in opposition. Commissioner Biggs is here. I was going to ask him to come up. He'll state about the P&Z meeting. Also, the developer is here, and the 2 gentlemen for the sign company. They are here as well for questions.
Thank you.
Council, Mayor, if you watch the video of our meeting, we went through this, I think, pretty thoroughly. We were shorthanded. We only had 4 people at the meeting, so we had 4 perspectives there and questions. But the first consideration was I always get nervous when they start saying the word amendment to PDs. We cleared that up right away. Also, the second thing I was worried about is, does this open up the fact they can put one on the back side, the other side, and the other side? And the reality is this is only one sign. This amendment's for this one sign only. So we kept that straight. I'm glad you explained the SUP portion of it. There were a lot of questions for the sign manufacturer as it relates to the technical part of this thing, lumens and LEDs and, at night in the townhomes and all that. A lot of discussion about line of sight. Every time we do a sign on that property, everybody says, well, you can't see it from the freeway. And the reality is you can't see it from the freeway, really, So this, I think the general consensus was this really follows up on our business-friendly concept that we put in every one of these reports as we go through them. The other thing we really weren't worried about was was it going to be flashing and animated, the LED portion of it. And no, it's not. It's on, I think it's 8-second static rotation. I don't know about you guys, but I don't read signs like that when I drive down the freeway. All it tells me, and I think this is really the point of the story, is that we have a lot of retail over here you ought to come look at. And there's 46,000 cars that go up and down this street every day now. If you'll notice, there are 3 cranes in the air in Westlake over there. This is only going to continue the traffic, and somebody might be looking for a different place to eat than, Roanoke for lunch at these offices and stuff over there. So our general consensus was it meets all the criteria, and I think it'll add a lot to the business for Trophy Club. And if it adds a lot for the business, it also adds a lot to the taxes that we collect on these businesses. It also keeps us from having businesses go vacant there if we can drive more traffic to them. We've already had that happen on a couple of occasions, which is not looking good. We could blame, supply chain issues or COVID or whatever else we're blaming everything else on. But I think this will help keep people in there and not have the turnover in the retail spaces. The vote was for this, unanimous. And we asked a lot of questions, and I'm sure you're going to ask a lot of questions. So.
Okay, great.
Any questions for me?
We can't do that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anyone wants?
We've had one person sign up to speak in opposition.
Okay.
Paul Jablonski.
Okay. Would you like to come forward, Paul? That's you. That's you. We know you.
That picture up there makes my job a little easier. I need to do the name and address thing.
Yes, give us your
Okay.
name and address, please.
Paul Jablonski, live at 104 Green Hill Trail South here in Trophy Club. I'm here to talk about the impact of this monument sign. The other day, I came across an article, and that article was written by an architect. His name was Duo Dickinson. I know you never heard of him, neither did I. But he did say something in that article that struck me. What he said was, and I quote, "What we build is a mirror of what we value." I started thinking about that, and I asked myself, there's a 35-foot monolith with an 8-foot by 16-foot billboard belonging to Trophy Club. Does it bring enough value to change and amend PD 30? That's a question. So I thought about that, and I want to consider 4 factors in order to answer that question. Factor 1 is how appropriate is it to Trophy Club? Number 2, how appropriate is it for town center? Number 3, what's the benefit to town center? And number 4, what's the benefit to the community? So those are the 4 items I want to kind of hopefully briefly get to. Let's start with Trophy Club. Trophy Club is a picturesque and pleasant place to live. Talk about the golf course. Now, I've never been on it, but I hear it's really scenic. And, there's 18 holes of it, so there's got to be something good there somewhere. What about Trophy Club Park? You got the natural landscape in Trophy Club Park. It's not developed very too much. It's nature at its best, really. And that's part of the picturesque Trophy Club. And the clock tower, it's a landmark. It's freestanding. Most clock towers are part of a building. And so that adds again to the picturesque part of Trophy Club, as well as the gentle hills that we have here and abundance of trees. I mean, to me, it's a great place to be. A 35-foot tall monolith with an 8 by 16-foot billboard doesn't exactly fit my picture of Trophy Club. I don't think it's the impression we should make as we approach the main entrance to our town from the east going west on the frontage road. So that's Trophy Club. What about the town center itself? Well, I didn't know this, but I do now, that town center was designed to emulate the Legacy Center in Plano. Now, that was a big surprise to me, but that's why in PD 30, there's a picture of a monument sign. They weren't kidding around as to what they expected a monument sign to be. It wasn't this. That monument sign is, a picture of the one in the Legacy at Plano, and it is just what the PD 30 said. It just identifies the center itself. That's all that's on it. Okay. The other thing about that's the Legacy Center is Scott Beck. I came across a quote that he gave when he was being interviewed when it was being built and everything like that. And this is what he said. He said that it's certainly smaller than the Legacy West, but certainly we're going to have the different activities that are like a Legacy West. It's not just a standard strip center. A billboard like this shouts strip center. It's not appropriate for a planned development.
Your time is expired.
Well, that's too bad.
Mayor, can I have to give it another minute or so?
We will give you 2 more minutes, please.
2 more minutes, thank you. Okay. TxDOT wouldn't even agree to put that sign on there right away at 114. It would have been a better place. You get to see it and all that kind of stuff, but they wouldn't do it. Billboards are more appropriate in dense commercial areas like this, along highways and on the open road. The benefit to the town center businesses, I'm wondering how they're doing. I mean, there's been indications that maybe they're struggling a bit, and that's why whomever is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this sign. Can this sign really help the businesses? Do we really believe that? I think today potential customers mostly rely on the internet and social media, and that's where they get their information, and word of mouth. It's directed at westbound 114 traffic to an audience heading for Roanoke points west. It's a mass marketing approach. And we already mentioned the 8 seconds of time that they actually see that. So there's traffic that speeds by on 114. They're just going to see one message for one business. I don't think the tenant plates are going to catch anyone's attention with this big billboard on top of that. So I don't think, based on those points, that this sign's very likely to derive much business. I think the mass marketing dollars would be better spent targeting areas around Trophy Club. I think that would do more for those businesses than this big icon. The benefits to the community, it does not significantly help town center business, I don't believe. It's not compatible with the Trophy Club image. and I couldn't find any other redeeming value for the sign.
Paul, thank you. You need to
I know.
wrap it up.
It's wrapped up.
Wrap it up.
was it.
Thank you so much.
I just urge you
Appreciate you. Thank you.
to vote against amending it.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so what we want to do is, do you want the applicant to speak, or can the applicant speak at this time?
Yep. Yeah.
Yes, please. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joshua. I live at 6623 Crestland Avenue in Dallas, Texas. Just want to kind of give the big picture here. So the center has been open for about, I would say, 4, maybe 5 years. I mean, we opened really right in the middle of COVID, I remember. I was here when we finished the building and all of that. Since then, we've had I think we've had 3 tenants that opened up and closed. Everybody, I think, knows about Blue 22. Mac was very adamant about trying to bring more visibility to the center. We added, lights to the trees to try to help that out. But obviously, I mean, we can't just blame it on that. But those are the tenants that went out of business. We know at least of 2 more tenants. I don't feel like sharing the names or anything that are currently struggling at the center. This is not, contrary to what I've heard, it doesn't say Beck Ventures, it doesn't say Scott Beck on the sign. This is literally for the tenants because of what we've heard for our tenants. We don't put even somebody mentioned, can the town advertise on it? I don't even think the town can advertise on it. This is strictly for our tenants. We're not gonna go out there and spend a couple $100,000 putting a sign just because we want to spend money. This is very extremely expensive. And we're trying to do this for the tenants to help bring more business. Yes, it's a tall sign, but with Trophy Club is great, but how many residents do you have at Trophy Club? 15,000? That's not gonna, it's great and everybody knows about it. If you live in Trophy Club, you know about the town center. But what we're trying to do is to actually put us on the map so people driving and going to Roanoke and, like you said, not know there's town center and there's a bunch of restaurants out there. There's a mention of the blade. People were asking, why did you put only 20 blades? The reason is because we got to be careful about the sizing. If we go too small, yeah, I can put 30 blades on this sign, but then really nobody's going to see it. We've kind of tried to use our experience because we do own over pylon sign in Dallas, making sure it's tall enough. I can't guarantee somebody on 114 driving 60 miles an hour is going to see it, but that's why the screen is there as well. The purpose of the screen is to really put us on the map and show people, here you go, there's Anamia's happy hours and all of that. So from our point of view, it's really for the tenants. A lot of them, some of them are struggling, some struggle, they had to close down. Some of them are struggling and our tenants live at Trophy Club. So what we're asking is, we're presenting that, and we feel like this is what our tenant needs. We did a lot of study. We had the sign company bring the screens and put in an angle to see what would be the right angle to actually being able to see it. It doesn't have, we have a study we've provided, it doesn't have an impact on anybody living around in terms of the lights. Even the townhomes, the impact is so minimal that they won't see any difference. So, that's really the point of this is just to help our businesses and make the center even more successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comment? Do we want to hear from the sign people at this time or later? Okay. So then I'm going to, not the sign people, don't, everybody's bad. We're going to close the meeting. 7:54, we'll close the public hearing. And we will open it up for discussion. And I would like for us to just kind of talk this through, comments you might have. Redesigning it up here is not the purpose. So if we can, let's not get into redesigning the sign. That's their job, if that's what we want them to do, okay? So let's talk about it from a point of view of businesses, aesthetics, placement. Is that agreed upon? Is that good? Don't design the sign, Dennis.
Not going to design the sign.
Don't design the sign.
I'll object.
Okay,
but
you
I
can
won't
object.
design.
That's, don't design the sign. Anyone?
I would
okay,
like to start
with
off
it.
with saying that there was some information that's been provided after noon today that I have not looked at because I haven't been home. Whether that has an impact on tonight or not, I don't know. But I do object normally to getting late information before a meeting and being able to look at it.
What information was it?
Well, I believe there was something that Brandon sent two emails out.
It was a picture of some.
That had to do with this, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, okay?
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, let me kind of start here. We spent 2 days as town and town council talking about our strategic plan. It was a great 2 days, I think, by all accounts, from staff, from all the feedback of town council. And one of the very first things we talked about and put on the board for us to look at 2 days was the town of Trophy Club, what are our competitive advantages as a town, and what are our competitive disadvantages? So on the advantage side, there's a whole list of them. I won't go through them, but a couple that stick out. Small town / family centered. Isolated bubble was actually viewed as kind of an advantage. Couple of the competitive disadvantages, not a destination, a little bit isolated, and limited tax base. It's a disadvantage, right? You want to grow your tax base. So when you look at all four of those, they, in some ways, kind of compete against each other a little bit. Yeah, we're the small town. We love our small town. We're isolated, but yet we want to grow our tax base, and we don't want to be isolated. So when I look at this whole project, I'm a big advocate of supporting businesses. We have got to do, whatever that is, a better job, because they are our lifeblood. They are our tax base, they're our partners, some cases friends. I'm not sure if this sign is the answer. I think it's part of the answer. Jeanette said we're not here to kind of redesign the sign, and I agree. A couple comments about the sign to think about. The big top art, the 8 by 16 billboard. Personally, that's the part I'm struggling with. And I'm thinking in my mind, what's the difference between awareness and Las Vegas? I'm all about the awareness, not the big Las Vegas necessarily. What I think is getting lost a little bit is this sign at the very bottom, if you're all looking at the picture, is the story. It says, Trophy Club Town Center. That's it. That's the big news I think we're trying to convey. To me, that ought to be up at the top. Big, bold, and then stuff underneath. Just my opinion, I think we ought to sell, and I think somebody said that. We got to sell Town Center. We got to do the best we can. I think there's a way to do it with this, with smarter people than me to figure it out. But Mayor, thank you. That's my 2 cents.
Other comments?
I have to agree with Steve. I wouldn't object to leaving the 8 by 16 boulevard or bulletin board, but the rest of the sign, whether the town center is at the bottom or the top, I would be in favor of.
And just to be clear, Jeff, because I heard you, I'm not saying get rid of the middle stuff at all. I think you need to have that. All I'm suggesting is, at least to be clear, flip-flopping the top for the neon top part.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask why 35 foot was chosen as to be 35 foot tall? How did that arrive at?
Would you please come to the podium so you can answer our questions? Thank you. State your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Bill Swift. I reside at 7417 Woodhaven Drive in North Richland Hills.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks. Just the traffic count alone is something that drove this and line of sight. So if you're heading westbound on the east side and you look at line of sight, it puts you basically dead on. You know, anything lower, you're going to be struggling to see it. Anything higher is just, I mean, at that point, it becomes a waste. I mean, you've got power lines and things like that up there.
Yeah, and an example of that is the Tom Thumb monument sign, which is 30 feet tall, I think.
32 and a half.
32 and a half. And where is it situated? In a hole.
In a hole, yes, ma'am.
And so if you put it up there with this, it's not going to be much shorter than what you have, but we don't see it. So it's of no value.
I would concur with that.
It's really sad, actually.
All right, so basically it's line of sight visibility.
Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
sir.
I object to the height. As I drove it 3 times, and if you were to drive under the Davis Street underpass and exit the Trophy Club Drive, you see the bottom of the High Line wires in the green grass. That says that this sign would not be visible from that exit. And if I'm not correct, I've double checked, and the high lines are 35 to 40 foot, give or take, something like that. So you can't see it from there. So once you get over the rise and Trophy Club Town Center is visible on the right side, you don't need 35 feet to see it. If you had a billboard of lower that had lights or signs or whatever, I think that's the same as being 35 or being 25. So I don't understand having the size, the billboard's structure. I have trouble with. So, and trying to drive 3 times, driving through there at 60 miles an hour, if you look to the right at all, then you're going to see something, a sign, whatever you put there. So the question is not the height as much as the visibility of it. I don't like LED signs, but if that LED sign, but this town has LED signs, so that's a given. But if that was a lower sign, I think I might be more favorable to it.
I want to clarify. So you're driving 60 miles an hour on the service road or on?
No, I'm on the freeway.
Okay, I wanted to clarify.
Because on the service road, you can't see it until you top that rise, which is the same rise I'm looking at when I exit on Trophy Club Drive. And then once you're over that rise, then it's fully visible for a few minutes, I don't know minutes, but for a short period of time until you get to the next Trophy Lake.
Right.
Yeah.
The comments?
Did you? Go ahead.
Stacey, go ahead, Stacey.
I don't have an issue with the sign itself. I agree with Steve, I agree with Jeff in looking at the sizing. However, I want to say that our businesses need help. And we need to do just about everything we can do to help them. Our residents alone cannot keep our tax base. We go out to eat in every other city. Sometimes we go here, sometimes we go to South Lake, we go to Keller, we go to Fort Worth. We need people to come here, and we can't get them here. And if we can't get them here, our businesses cannot stay open. And if we have no business, we have no tax income. Bottom line. I don't know what the right answer is, but these businesses need exposure and they need visibility to bring people to them. And whatever we need to do that is what needs to happen.
So the decision, the issue is size, one, the height. And again, it goes back to people are in the sign business, the monument business, do studies a lot. They determine what is the best design or the best monument for that particular need. And if we're in agreement, we want signage to help support our businesses, what do you want to do? Luann?
Well, a sign is definitely needed, but we have heard from so many, and I've had several text messages from citizens today, and some of them are architects. And what we're trying to do is to get a cohesive feel for this town. And as Steve has gone over, we've put a lot of thought into the branding of this town. And I love the idea of putting Trophy Club Town Center up top. We have citizens that when we have an event at Trophy Club Town Center, they'll say to one of us, where is that?
Town Hall.
And it just amazes me they don't know. So maybe we need to think about branding that, and we're not telling you how to do your business model because it's your business. You're asking for an amendment to the PD, which we'd like to find a way to do. But we need it to be cohesive. We need it to brand that center well. I did have a question. I know we're not designing, but sir, could you answer a technical question for me on the blades? I don't read engineering when it comes to this. Are they backlit?
They are backlit, yes, ma'am.
They are backlit, so they're interchangeable as tenants come and go. We hope they don't go. But they can select which of the tenants that they have up there and what order.
That is correct.
That's great. If we were to consider maybe looking at this being tweaked a little in size, but still at the same location, still with an LED, maybe look at that billboard part of it, because I think that's where we've got the most friction. It's coming from the size of that, based on the size of our town center, not being that big. This isn't the Legacy, of course. This is the town center. I think we might be more amenable to looking at it. Perhaps we could remand this back to P&Z, have them look at it again, and think about how it would better fit identifying Trophy Club Town Center so that not just our residents know, some of them don't, where it is. But we really want to see something that fits the feel of this town a little better, but we really want to support the town center. We want these businesses to thrive. How many restaurants do we have there? 9? I don't think
they're nice.
There's more restaurants than days in a week, I know that.
we need them to be visual. I just don't think that what's presented to us tonight is going to get the traction that we want it to get. We need to scale it back based on the comments that we've heard here.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the signage, you do this for a living, expertise. Is there any variation in line of sight in any other different size of the sign, or is that where it sits based on the road and how you look at it and when you're driving? Is there any other variation of that?
I mean, it's going to be subjective to a point, you know, where you're at and how far out you're looking. Something I should have mentioned earlier, and my apologies, part of the 20 different tenant panels also is driving the overall size of the sign. As was mentioned earlier, you get to a certain point where they're just not visible. It doesn't do anybody any good.
So in looking at a monument sign like that, and you're looking at 35 feet, you're in a car, is there anything monumentally different than a 32 foot and a 35 feet when you're looking at something that big?
No.
No.
Not on something of that small of a nature.
Yeah, so you're talking.
Now, if we're talking 20 feet compared to 35, yes, that would be drastic.
And then my next question is for Joshua. is it possible to maybe redesign and then come back with putting Trophy Club Town Center on the top? Like Councilmember Flynn mentioned, is that even possible, or is it in the design concept, is that not doable?
I'm sure it's possible. I mean, for sure it's possible. Obviously, I think, I don't know, it would work with the amendment and all of that today. Again, I mean, Trophy Club is very important, and the town center, it's important. When we designed it, it was like, what can we do for our tenants? Like, and so pushing everything up for our tenants.
Have you talked to the tenants?
We've talked to a few tenants.
And?
Anything we can do to bring more of exposure on the outside is what they want. So,
I mean, at the end of the day, this is not in my backyard or any of our backyards. We're not looking at this daily. This is for our tenants and for other people to come and look at. So is it possible to send this back and recommend like tabling it and send it back and let them do a redesign?
That's a motion we can make after we finish the discussion.
It's possible, though.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
It's definitely possible. I'm just trying, then we would need some guidelines, again, because this is what, we sat down with a sign company. They just finished another $100,000 signs for us in Dallas. We trust them. We've worked with them a long time. We came with a problem. They came up with a solution. I hear you can drive by and you can give your opinion. It's great, but for example, what would we need to do if the size was 35 feet, right? Those people are saying this is the size if you want to, especially the way the highway dips and then you go back up, if you want to see the sign. You don't want to see the sign to your right and it's already too late. You're driving 60 miles an hour, right? So you need to be able to see that sign ahead of time, not just when it's here on the sign, it's too late already. Because at 60 miles an hour, I mean, that image, you're not going to see it, right? So it needs to be far away. And obviously the way everything is designed with the exit is kind of hard. That's why that sign has to be high.
But to that point, you can't see it now, whether it's 35 feet or 50 feet. Once you get past, to Dennis's point, you're driving 60, 65. By the time that sign's on your right, you've missed it. You can't.
No, he was mentioning the exit.
Okay, yeah, I was mentioning the exit for Trophy Club Drive, but you cannot see it from there. But once you do see it going over the rise, what you're talking about, I not only can see the sign, but I can see the grass at the base. Mm-hmm. So it's not a matter of the height that I can't, when you're talking about line of sight. But at 60 miles an hour, you're not clicking that instant. But as soon as it's visible on the right side, I can see the grass bottom, because one of my notes is, don't put any landscaping on there because you'll hide Trophy Club Town Center. But I wasn't going to bring that up now. But anyway, that's how I was viewing it, that any sign, the 20-foot sign would be line of sight to somebody. And granted, yes, you're at 60 miles an hour, you're right past it, right? So you'd either have to exit Trophy Lake Drive and make a U-turn, or in more reasonable, I think it was brought up at P&Z or something like that, is that this is going to be a memory thing, so maybe 2 or 3 times later you would stop. So I'm not against the sign having tenants on it. I'm just against the billboard aspect of it. Thank you. But
from a process standpoint, I think we're all saying the same thing. Stacy brought it up. I mean, this is really going back to P&Z, right? They're here. They'll hear the feedback. I would encourage, how do we get the yes? One of my favorite lines, right? So take it back. That's what P&Z does. You've heard the commentary. Work with Joshua, who seems to be very receptive to some of these comments, certainly sign builders. And I think there's an avenue here.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion so that we can move this on. We could be here all night. And so I'm going to make a motion to remand the case PD-AMD-24-002, PD-30, amendment, multi-tenant monument, back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that's really, honestly, I would like to make, first of all the All those in favor?
I'll second.
Second, now I want to discuss for a moment before we vote. I just wanted to say that this is an opportunity for us to look at the real purpose of our boards. The board is the first contact with the public. It's at these board meetings that our public need to come to and express their issues, their needs, their concerns regarding an agenda item or something. Because they get to vet it, they get to talk with the designers, they get to talk, and then they have this opportunity to then present it to the council. Does that make sense? I would really love it for our town to learn to come to our boards. Our the park board does pretty good. We have people that come to the Park and Recreation Board. But for our residents to come to the board and speak to what they want, do it at the board. This is just a good opportunity to explain that. So all those, we've already voted?
No.
No, we have not. So all those in favor?
Tabling?
Did we get a second?
Yes, we did.
Dennis,
second. So all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? No opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Biggs and Mr. Cox and all those who are here, because I know you can come back with something that you've heard from us, as well as, and you'll probably get some more input from other residents. How about that?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacko.
Thank you. Thanks all guys for coming.
Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you. Okay, we will go on to individual items now.
Item 7, consider a resolution casting the Town of Trophy Club's vote appointing a candidate to the Denko 911 District Board of Managers.
Oh, yes. Do we have a motion? Would y'all please, you can vote on, would you please look at your agenda item?
So
Here, I'd make.
Okay, you ready to make a motion?
I'll make.
I'm going to say there were 2 nominees for this.
Yes.
One was Jim Carter and one was Greg.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Jim Carter.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll make.
Second.
Okay, second, Stacy seconds that. All those in favor, raise your hand. And those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Number 8.
Consider authorizing the town manager to pay Encore Electric Delivery Company, LLC, $43,215.12 for services rendered to lower a main power line required by the Indian Creek Bear Green Storm Drainage Project.
Is there a motion for this? You want to,
Mayor,
oh, I'm sorry.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Well, were you going to talk to
You want
this?
to talk?
Speak to this?
We're good.
Y'all
You don't need
right
to.
ahead.
Okay.
You are
Listen,
You jumped up there like you were ready.
you are
to go.
making my night.
Matt, this is your luck tonight. Moving this forward.
Nope.
Any, a second, did we get a second?
I'll second.
Dennis, second that. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, motion passes. Matt, you can sit. Thank you, Matt.
Good job, Matt.
Good job.
Really good. That tie's working for you.
That's right. Now we're going to item number 9. That's
Consider rescinding the previous town council motion on November 13th, 2023, expanding the community pool amenities through Phase 2 of the community pool project and authorizing the town manager to negotiate and execute a professional services agreement with Park Hill for public engagement, the development of pool amenity options, schematic design, and construction cost analysis services in the amount of $101,759.
Thank you. It's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. bringing before you tonight to talk about the aquatics is this is an important part of our community. And as part of the agenda packet, looking at the history and not diving too much into a history lesson of where we've been, but this goes back to November 8th, 2022, when City Council approved the renovation project for the Aquatic Center. And phase 1 was completed after the 2023 swim season. Some of those were upgrades to the existing pool mechanical systems, restroom improvements, enhancements to the concessions and office areas, as well as painting some of the amenities within the splash pad area. The motion was then voted on was voted as part of that to engage in an agreement with Halfin Associates for the community pool capital improvement project not to exceed $4 million. And that motion passed unanimously. And what had done after that was then the project was divided into 2 phases. One phase being the pool mechanical area as well as the upgrades to the restrooms, concessions, and those areas there. So as phase 1 was completed, and that was completed at the beginning of the last summer swim session, and some of the construction continued on throughout the summer, and then the remaining things were completed early fall of 2023. And as the town manager and myself came on and joined the town in December, and in January, we began to look at the documents as well as we started to look at phase 2 and the steps that we needed to take to continue down that path, and looking at the process as well as the transparency of, how we engage the community in decisions and providing input into there, as well as the existing construction that happened with that current phase 1. And we saw some inconsistencies and some things that needed some detail that we had questions about. And so we sat down with the current design firm and asked about, the construction administration and going through that. And we had determined that at that time, that there was some missing elements from the scope. And as we had just finished phase 1, that it was an opportunity for us to bring some transparency back into the project. And before we engaged the additional design services for phase 2, to terminate that contract and bring it back to the public and to the design firms to be able to bid on that and provide proposals about their qualifications. And I will make note that as we presented that to Halfin Associates, they also agreed that this was the proper way to do it. And so that contract was then terminated. The new RFQ process was advertised in May, and we had that open for 30 days where we submitted the scope of work for phase 2, which consists of adding additional pool amenities and the remaining amount in the capital improvement projects of $2 million. And the town received four portfolios from different firms, including one from the firm that we had terminated the contract with. The makeup of this board, again, was members of the park board on the committee as well as city staff. We scored those individuals and invited the top 2 firms to be able to come and interview with us and present their qualifications to us, as that was also included in your packet today with Park Hill's presentation that was 45 pages of projects that they've worked on as well as past projects. And after it was deemed by the committee to look at Park Hill, we took that to Park Board, and that was on the May 20th meeting, and it was unanimously voted to proceed with Park Hill. Now, as we look at the process going forward, and as you look at the agenda item, in order to go forward and consider entering into contract with them, we need to look at previous motions. So that takes us back to the November 13th meeting in 2023, where Town Council moved to approve Phase 2 to include the slide with the location moved out to separate the party room for later discussion. This motion was approved by Town Council, and it allowed work to begin on the slide while generating further input and options for additional features to be added to the community pool. After the Town Council's actions and new developments, like we had mentioned about the contract termination, as well as infrastructure conflicts for the desired site slide location, as well as conflicts with other amenities to be considered in the future, prompted us to recommend that the planning for the entire site be set and approved by the Town Council prior to moving forward with construction and design. And so it is to proceed with the new professional services agreement with Park Hill, it's necessary for us to rescind the previous action taken by Town Council on November 13th. This rescinding action will allow for the full project design, funding allocation that has been allocated, as well as additional community input. Additionally, a new professional services agreement with Park Hill aims to ensure that the community receives high-quality, well-planned amenities that meet the current needs and that they have the opportunity to provide input. One of those things, as Councilman Flynn talked about with our pickleball project, that we really brought up in the interviews was, what is their approach to community engagement? And I will let our consultant talk about that a little bit, but we were very excited about their approach, that it's not about making people come to us, but it's about them going to where the people are and engaging with them as they're recreating in those areas and finding out individually what they specifically want in their community pool, what will bring them to the community pool, what will bring them bringing their kids or their grandkids back to the community pool. And I'll let them expand a little bit on that. Real quick on the funding as we talk about that. The project budget for Phase 2 of the community pool is currently at $2.2 million. That's been allocated from the sale of 2021 bonds with the current capital improvement budgets. So that's been allocated. That's there. And Phase 1 of the contract, and also one of the things that we heard was about building in times that we come back to council, and that we don't just go through the entire phase of the project, but how can we build in times that we come back and we share our findings with you and get that approval to go forward with suggested designs and approaches that you all agree on and that you've received input from the community in. And so the way that we're phasing this contract with Park Hill is that it'll include facilities, programming, and schematic design for the cost of $101,759. And then with the completion of design approval, once we've done the public engagement and they've been able to create the schematic design with those options, and we come back to you all to be able to then vote on that option that best represents our town and our community, then Phase 2 will include the typical architectural and engineering costs of preparing the construction documents, the bidding, the construction administration, as well as the closeout. And so then we will come to you all, once we approve the option going forward, what that additional fee will be. And it's important to note that as we look, we're targeting 15% of the total construction costs for that fee for Phase 1 and Phase 2. With that, I would like to introduce Chris Tribble. He is our representative from Park Hill, and he's condensed down that 45 slide presentation to 10 to give a brief introduction, and then after that we'll have we can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chase. Mayor, members of the council, it's my privilege to be here this evening. Mayor for the day, Ms. Isabella. Appreciate your attendance as well.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Chris Tribble. I'm with Park Hill. I've been with Park Hill for about 8 months now. I recently retired as the Parks and Community Services Director from the city of Southlake after about 18 years. I want to walk you through, as you mentioned, I know you had a lot of information on our statement of qualifications that was included in your packet. And so I'll be real brief and run through these and give you plenty of time to ask any questions and all. At Park Hill, we're about building community. That's what we do. We enjoy working with communities like Trophy Club to be able to bring parks and recreation, fire stations, city halls, et cetera, to fruition. And so as this is an aquatics project, we've also partnered, and I'll walk through this a little bit, with Water Technologies. And so we will be the team that you will be working with moving forward on this. In terms of Park Hill, we are a company that's been in business a little over 78 years, started in West Texas, have expanded throughout Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. We are a multidisciplinary architectural and engineering firm. You can see here all the different areas of practice, including construction management, site development, commercial, landscape architecture, planning and urban design, et cetera. We've done a lot of work in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well recently, and I believe all that was included in your packet. Water Technologies. Water Technologies is the largest aquatic design firm in the United States. They have done over 6,000 municipal and community facilities. They were formed in 1983. They've got project work all over the world. They've got in 25 different countries. And again, they're, in our opinion, the top aquatic firm in the United States. Your project team, including myself, you'll see here our principal in charge, Chad Davis, Jen Gerber, the vice president with Water Technologies, and James Williams. Those will be your key people involved in the project, as well as all the different trades that we need in terms of project management, landscape architecture, civil engineering, mechanical and structural engineering, et cetera. As Chase mentioned, I did narrow these down quite a bit, and I just wanted to touch on some of these that we've done recently and that we're currently working on. We did 3 different regional aquatic centers for the city of El Paso. You can see those laid out here. Also an aquatic center in Big Spring. In addition to that, we're currently working with the city of Arlington on the Arlington Active Adult Center, which is an indoor facility, and it's in construction right now. It's set to open later on this winter. And currently, we were just awarded a project, actually competed for this project against another design firm for Reeves County, Texas, in Pecos, for them to develop a water park. And so this was just awarded to us, and we're in the process of getting kicked off and started on that particular project as well. A few others that Water Technologies have worked on that you may recognize: Dove Water Park in Grapevine, the Bedford YMCA, Great Wolf Lodge there in Grapevine, and then another large facility, and just another one in Wisconsin, a large regional aquatic center. As Chase mentioned, in terms of our project approach, we do believe in strong community engagement on all of these projects. We need to know what the citizens are looking for. And so in terms of our design approach, we'll first work with staff, the boards and commissions, and then going out and developing an understanding of what are the needs. As Chase mentioned, we'll go out to the pool. I think we've got 3 different visits that we're going to go out to the pool and talk to the folks that are using that facility. We'll also be working with Chase and his team on putting together some links to keep the public in mind so that you can use your website and your social media outputs so that you can keep those people engaged, and also to be able to provide comments along the way. So once we develop that understanding, we'll start working through some visioning exercises. We'll look at collaborating with the park board, the town council, your staff, and we'll go through a really in-depth analysis where we understand what we're going for. We'll bring forward up to 3 different concepts for you to review that, again, that we'll work with staff and the park board and the town council on. And ultimately, we'll get to the point where we'll refine that down to a single concept, get a thumbs up from the town council, and then we'll move forward with the next phase in terms of getting approval to move on with additional design. In terms of design considerations, there's lots of opportunities out there. You can see on this slide, we've got different types of amenities that you might find in these aquatic centers and that you might like to have here in the town of Trophy Club. You can see there by age group, different types of things. So you'll have an opportunity to go through all the different types of amenities. We'll talk to your citizens out at the pool on what they would like to see. And then in terms of just not only the components, but also thinking about this from an operational and management perspective. You want to make sure that we don't design a facility that's going to crazy increase the amount of staff you're going to have. We want to make sure that it's efficiently operated, the mechanical systems. We want to make sure that there's good line of sight for your lifeguards. We want to make sure from the safety perspective. And then also, of course, the cost of consumption in terms of what it's going to take to operate that, ADA accessibility, obviously, and then working with your staff to make sure we have ample support spaces. So that would be storage, the mechanical, whatever else it might be needed for the different amenities that are chosen. So with that, I went through that very quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but we are very excited to have the opportunity to work with the Town of Trophy Club and bring this project to fruition for you.
And thank you, Chris.
And just real quick to follow up before we open up for those questions, when we talk about the funding for this and what was allocated for those phases, currently from the previous contract, phase 2, it was approached at $252,429 for phase 2. And so if you think about the current fee and dividing that into into community engagement and schematic design, we're right along in those same areas. And that will all be within the total allocation of the 2.2 million that is available within the CIP budget. And I'll open it up for questions for myself.
Chase, can you go back to the slide, the money slide that had the 100 and some thousand? I was getting confused by that number. Where'd it go?
Where'd I go? I broke it.
You broke it.
Okay, let me get back.
Deja vu.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Right here.
So that number, that 101,759, walk me through that number again, what that is, and what part of it does it fall in here?
So when you talk about phase 2, which is the overall from community engagement to grand opening or ribbon cutting from that, what we're doing is taking that fee, and you have your typical breakdowns of a project, which is your community engagement, your schematic design, your construction documents, your bidding, and your building. And so taking that into 2 categories, which then puts us back in front of you all before we proceed. It's kind of that hard stop that it says, let's allocate for the first half of that and do the community engagement and then create those schematic designs as well as those budget numbers of what those options are going to cost, and then come back to you all and say, these are the options that we can do within our budget and based on the community engagement. And then we would allocate an additional fee that our target is to not be more than 15% of the overall $2.2 million, which is a typical design fee for these organizations to be able to do this type of work. So right now, that overall 15% fee is basically cut in half for that first portion, which is the public engagement as well as the schematic design.
So, sorry, I'm still confused. You just quoted a number, unless I wrote it down wrong, 252, 429 or something? How?
Yeah, so that amount is, so one of the questions that we've gotten is, compared to the phase 2 half contract amount previously, right? Those were costs to be incurred yet still in the future. That amount was scheduled to be $252,000. So the question is this an increase in cost on the project? And the answer is, no, it's right in line with what we were going to be paying engineering services wise for the next phase anyway on that part. So that was the point of that information. So the half contract, this amount is in line, the amount with what it is that we were going to be paying for engineering services in phase 2, whether it be this company or another one.
And half of it's for the gathering of information and design, and the other half is
for construction documents, bidding, construction administration.
And again, at this point, we've split this normal phase into 2 phases to ensure that there's plenty of opportunity to come back to the council, right-size the project before we just approve the second, the moving forward with what it is that we actually built. Okay.
Question?
Comments?
The 252-429, now that is to take us through this initial engagement through construction drawings?
For the past contract, that was what it was estimated, was to take us from schematic design through ribbon cutting and closeout.
And the construction drawings, if we split it up as you're talking about, that's going to eat a lot into that 2.2 million when you start doing your engineering.
So our target is to keep that amount to 15% of the 2.2 million, which is industry standard, roughly.
300,000, something like that,
Yeah.
right? Rough math.
Which will, and that's why we're using that 252 that was projected as that cost as just to let you know that we're not going outside what was originally projected for this, but that Park Hill is coming in competitively to be in that same realm that our previous designers.
So we're talking about this 300,000 industry standard for that portion of it, plus this 100,000 that we've just had presented to us. So we're looking at 400,000?
The 100,000 would be a portion of that.
Would be a portion of that
Correct.
3?
Yep, because we're sectioning that overall contract into 2 phases as far as a fee.
So you're exceeding by your estimates the 252 that was already in the line item by 50, 60,000.
Roughly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
other questions?
Yeah. All right. So the first, I wasn't aware that phase 2 included other amenities. I thought it was strictly the meeting room and the slide. So discontinuing that, was that discussed at the Parks Board meeting in that way? Or was just that you were going to go out and have somebody do a new look at the pool?
So one thing that we discussed about was in all of my research about what had been done before, there's meeting notes saying that, city staff, here's their wish list, but that missing component is the community engagement. What did we get from community meetings? And looking at the previous scope of the of the past contract, that wasn't an actual line item within their scope to go out to the community and find out what they want. So we're basing these amenities, whether it's a slide, other things like that have come out, the community room, that it's based on a wish list of the select individuals versus what our community is wanting to come out and say what they would like to see within that pool. And so those are still options that are on the table.
Okay.
But
Understand, but previous to y'all coming,
correct.
The Parks Board was the community input. And that was how, in the different committees we had, is how we got community input. We didn't go out in the same manner y'all are doing, which I like, by the way, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't community input. And the slide and the whole project originally between the 2 phases was fully discussed in different Park Board meetings and was a unanimous vote. And they actually talked about different things about it at the same time. So you're changing the system, which I'm not objecting to, but I just wanted to acknowledge that Parks Board did not fully discuss this. They fully discussed the RFQ in the subcommittee, and then the RFQ was presented to them. But as far as from what I saw at my listening to it, I couldn't tell a real good discussion that, hey, we're not going to do a slide, or we're going to look at this, and we're not going to do a meeting where we're going to look at see what it is or other amenities. So that kind of bothers me a little bit, in that I didn't see a full discussion at the Parks Board. The other is, it seems like we're going back to the word going, we're reinventing the wheel, let's go look at our parks, our pool. And what I heard from the discussion is, well, we already have a pool, we already have amenities. So how much more are we going to put into this? I'd just as soon take the $2 million and throw it onto the roads and not take it out of the parks if you don't want to do a slide. Anyway, so I'm objecting to spending the money, but I'm not objecting to terminating the original count issue.
And
thank you.
And just in response to that, a slide is not off the table. And
no, I understand. That was a big thing. Correct. Both at the Parks Board meeting and also at the council meeting. Some people, originally everybody voted for it, but then some people changed their mind, which they have the right to do.
Yep.
Okay.
And when we come back to council with the schematic designs, you know, very well, we could have a slide approach in there, and that, and then we have the community engagement component of citizens saying, yes, this is what we want. We'll have those responses, and it just provides more of a foundation of why we're doing what we're doing. And so, and that's one reason why it wasn't discussed, because I'm not taking anything off the table. I'm saying, here's all the things that have been presented in the past. Let's look at those, but let's also see if there's some new ideas that the community is looking at or that can agree on, and maybe that's something that we can fit in. One great thing about water technologies is, you know, as they talked about these large recreational spaces that they do, and I'll just hit on Great Wolf Lodge. Everybody goes to Great Wolf Lodge because they have water elements that no other organization has, and that's what kids enjoy, that's what they want to be a part of, and they're a very large organization. And one of those advantages that they have is their sourcing, that as being a large organization doing these large water parks, they have the advantage of sourcing other aquatic components, sometimes at a cheaper rate than what smaller organizations may be able to do. And that was one thing that really stood out to the committee as we listened to them, to help us save money and maybe get a little more, whether it might be a slide and some other amenities. Personally, I would like to see a little more that we can get versus just one attraction for the community.
Well, I'd like to just say that this is another example, I think, and the pickleball example is really good, and it's right fresh, because we have seen the process work. Typically, we get input that people come in here, and it's available sometimes, people don't want to, but I love it called the pop-up events. It brings people in, and I think the same thing can happen with the pool. We have an idea of what the pool could be, but let's hear from users that don't typically come into the park board meetings and push it out there. And again, too, I think both with the Bobcat exploration we're doing, with the pickleball exploration we're doing, and with this, we're setting a precedent in this town that we're going to do things that engage the people. We want you to be a part of this for today and for the future. And in addition to that, I think by using a consultant out there, that it will help us move into the future versus staying with what's comfortable maybe. And I think the investment in the upfront investment is the best way to go. It just keeps us out of trouble down the road.
You mentioned our partner, and Chris, I got to give you a shout out. That was impressive. I mean, your team that you put together and who you're partnering with, and of course, Chase, your team, but that's top notch. That's high cotton, as they say here in Texas. Good job, Chris.
Other comments? Yes, Gwen.
Chris, where'd you go? There he is. It was a beautiful presentation, and I believe in your firm, and I'm pro-firm. Director Ellis, you did a wonderful job Saturday. I was so impressed, and so impressed with the team that you had out there and the consultants that were doing the community engagement. My only problem with this is that by unanimous vote, we gave direction last November to move forward. Now, the things that are in play there is we had a contract that had to be severed. That shouldn't really wipe out all of the community involvement we had up to that point. Now, I understand that in order for this process to smoothly flow into this new contract, we're going to be paying more money to backtread and backpedal. Maybe it's necessary this time, but as a custodian of public funds, which is what we do, when I see us on, this is now the second project, that we're having to go in and pay again for services that should have been rendered under another scope of work, I object to that and support Councilmember Sheridan's objections. In this circumstance, I can see the need for this to flow since we interrupted the contract, but I do not like spending more taxpayers' dollars to backpedal. And I just want that objection on the books. But as far as rephasing now, we've gone from a 1-2 that should have been done a year and a half ago to a 1-2-3. And step back a little bit and pay more money. So I object to that, but I do believe in community engagement. I don't want to reimagine the whole pool again. We spent a lot of time and money doing that. But in this case, I see that there are a lot of elements at play that you weren't aware of. But I do think it's presumptuous to find my agenda to come out and say, without any notice, we're going to bring an item to you that says, let's rescind what you did a few months ago. I think we need a little bit more lead time on that kind of action that you're asking of us. That's what I got to say.
Okay, other comments? Okay, do we have a motion for this?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 9 as written.
And those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much, Chase.
Thank you.
And we look forward to the outcome. Thank you so much.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, please.
Excuse me.
We're not ready.
We're not ready.
I need to know if that was my last agenda item, and it was. We're adjourned, 8:52.
You can't adjourn. The mayor's going to adjourn.